Look at that first page. Are there any questions on that first page you want to see you go over before we move to the second? Three. Okay. So in 3, your line is right here. So since this is not a slanted line, this is horizontal or vertical. So you're going to be thinking about your hookups. This is what type of line? Vertical, which means it's X or Y? X. So if this is an X, we're going to look at where does that cross the x-axis, -3, and that is our equation. Besides your horizontal and vertical, everything else should be in y equals mx plus b. Questions on the second page? Pick one. Number 6, okay. So number 6, you're given your slope and y-intercept, so you're going to just write that in slope-intercept form. Y equals 1/5 x minus 3. Those, yeah. Other questions on the second page? 8, sure. So these 8 through 17, you're using your point slope, where you're given some x1, y1, and m. And you're going to put each of those numbers into your equation. So y minus 2 equals -3/2 times x minus a -2, then change it to a plus, or just make it a plus. And then keep going, distribute the -3/2. The 2's will cancel, just leaving the -3. And then add 2 to both sides. Y equals -3/2x minus 1. Questions on that? Questions on the third page? Maddie? The -3 over.
Yeah, like on the last problem, I got
The -1.
no, 3/2.
It's already negative.
Oh, okay.
Number 12. So number 12, it says the slope is undefined. If it said the slope was 0, you could do what we just did or do what we're about to do. But if it's undefined, you know this has to be one of your horizontal or vertical lines. Which one would that be? Vertical, which means it's going to be what type of line? X equals. So because it's an x equals, I'm going to look at my x value and write that down. With undefined slope, there is no work for you to do. You have to know that information.
Did we just choose between x equal to y?
Depending on the slope.
If the slope is 0, then we need to do the work.
If, no, you don't have to. If the slope is 0, you could do the work if you want to, or you could do the same thing with y. Other questions on the third page? Maddie? 15. So in all of 13 through 17, we're given 2 points. So now we have to find the slope first. Our y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Use our slope formula. We have negative 2 minus 0 over 3 minus a negative 2 or plus 2. What would that slope be? Negative 2 over 5. Then after you find your slope, you're going to go back and use your point slope to figure out your equation. If you have something with a 0, I would use that one. It'll just make your life a little bit easier. You don't have to, but you can. You could put minus minus and then change it to a plus, or just go ahead and put it as plus. And then, as I distribute, that's going to give me my answer, because this is just going to be y. Negative 2/5 x minus 4/5. Questions on that? Reminder, if you get something like 0, 0, still find your slope first, but then you don't have to do this part because that is your y-intercept. You can go straight from this to your equation because you have your y-intercept. Let's go on to page 4, your parallel and perpendicular lines. Questions on that page? Previous page.
Oh, wait. Oh, and 18.
18, okay. You can do 18. So let's do 18 first. It's asking which of these lines is parallel. So that means it would have the same slope, but in order to find that slope, I have to solve this first. Subtract 5x. And then divide everything by negative 2. So this would give us a positive 5 over 2x minus 9. Which of these lines has the same slope? C. Questions on that before we do 23?
When you're solving it, is the slope have to go before the right and 5x have to go before the
Yeah, put the slope, put it in y equals mx plus b.
Y.
Okay. Alright, in 23, it's asking us to find the value of a that would make the first equation perpendicular to the second. So we would have to solve the second equation, just like we just did, subtract, it's backwards, get rid of 4x, so add, divide everything by 3, and if a was perpendicular, what would that new slope be? I heard negative 3/4. What is it?
What do you do about the 7?
7 over 3.
Nothing. That was just part of the original equation as well. Questions on page 5? Yes. It's negative. Okay, so for number 27, it's asking us to find the parallel equation that is parallel to this one and goes through this point. So I would need to solve this one first, get rid of 5x by subtracting. Divide everything by 2. So that is my original equation. And now I need to find another equation that's parallel to that. So I'm going to cross out this y-intercept. I don't need it. I do need this slope. It needs to be the same since it's parallel. And I'm going to use my point slope and this point. So y minus 3 equals my slope, negative 5 over 2, parentheses, x plus 2. And then start to distribute and then solve. So the 2's would cancel there, just leaving negative 5, and then we could add 3 on both sides. So that would be the answer that would go on that line. This equation is parallel to that original one because they have the same slope but different y-intercepts. Questions on that or other questions on page 5? Page 6 is very similar to this, so if we don't have any questions, we're going to skip to page 7. Questions on that page? Page 7.
Question number
40. Okay, so this is your function notation. Now, with 40, you can do a couple different ways. It's not giving you f of x, it's giving you y, but we can still put x's in and figure out does it equal that y. So let's say I started with this first equation and started with this x. If I put 2 in here, I'm going to see does it equal that y. So if I were to keep going, this would be negative 4/3. I'll do that here. And if I were to add negative 4/3 and 1, that would not give me negative 4. So I know that one is not A. I'll try that once more with this next one. So if I were to put 2 in for x for that one, 1/2 times 2 is 1. 1 minus 5 is negative 4, so that would be my answer. And I could double check others to make sure that they work as well. I could also put this in the calculator. So in your y equals, put that first equation in. And then I'm going to go into the table, second graph. And let's say I think B might be my answer. If I look at the x values, when x is 3, y is negative 1, that seems to work. I'll just check one more. When x is 6, y is negative 3. So B is the answer to that first one. And then I'll do this method one more time, putting it back in algebraically. So let's try C for the 4x plus 3. If I put 1 in for x, this would give me 4 plus 3, which is 7. So that would be my answer there, and then by default, D would be the last one.
Can you put any number? I put 9.
Like in the calculator?
No, I mean in the equation.
Yes. But if you're given answer choices, I would only stick to the numbers that are given. 10. combination of like all these other ones. You're given 3 different functions at the top, and it wants you to use those specific ones. So f of negative 1, we're going to use the f of x function. So f of negative 1 equals 5 times negative 1 minus 20. And we're going to figure out what that is by multiplying 5 and negative 1, and then simplifying. F of negative 1 is equal to what? Negative 25. Then we're going to go back and do the same thing with the g of x equation, because I need g of 2, so I'm going to use that g of x. G of 2 equals 2 squared plus 5 times 2 minus 11. And then I'm going to figure out what each number is. So 2 squared will give me 4, this will give me 10, minus 11. What is g of 2? 3. Then the last part, it wants us to add those two together. So if I add negative 25 and 3, what would f of negative 1 plus g of 2 be? Negative 22. Questions on that? Other questions on this page? Or questions on page 8? What were you going to say? 40? 45. 45 is similar to the graph one we just did, so we're going to do that one. But 50 is here. So 46 is like the g of x equation. Yeah. For 450, we are given 4 different values that we have to find the range for. So we're going to put each of those into that equation, which is x squared minus 2. Find each of those and then figure this out. But because it's multiple choice, I can start to eliminate answers as well. So g of negative 2, make sure you're using parentheses and putting the square outside of that if you're using a calculator or doing that by hand. Also remember that when you square a negative, it's still positive. So g of negative 2 would be 2. So let's see. The b doesn't have a 2, so I can get rid of that. D doesn't have a 2. And C doesn't have a 2. So by default it's A. I don't even have to do the rest of that work. Now, if it wasn't multiple choice, you would be doing the work for every single one. Yes.
How does the negative become positive?
What's negative times a negative? Other questions on this page? The exponent?
Yeah.
We squared negative 2. You did negative 2 times negative 2 to get positive 4. Okay. The last pages 9 and 10 are for what we're going to cover after the test for the last quiz and project of Unit 4. So you have it, but we haven't covered that yet. Okay, so this quiz is still collaborative, but remember that doesn't mean just copying down answers. That also means if you feel like your answer is right, but someone else is saying, no, this is right, you don't have to listen. You can if you want. So don't feel pressure to change your answer. Don't second guess yourself. Okay? Make sure we are talking through our work, explaining, not just saying, I got this, and you write it down. explain your work.